Okay, learning should be fun. One of the biggest problems that we have in education and that we've had in education when we begin to formalize education through government systems is we compartmentalize education, meaning we said that kids had to go to school from 7 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that has become the norm for decades upon decades upon decades. And this is not learning, because what happens is you are compartmentalizing learning. And by saying that learning takes place from 7 in the morning to 3 in the morning, you're communicating that based on a school day. Students, it's hard to get students to become lifelong learners, because students begin to see learning as work, and we all want to get off of work. We always want to take a vacation, where we know that we cannot take a vacation from learning. So the strategy that we use currently for learning is it's anti-learning. Compartmentalizing learning is a bad thing. A couple of days ago, I saw a young man who had a varsity jacket on, and I think it said class of 2024, 12-year sentence completed, or almost completed, something like that. And that's not good. That's not good, because what he's communicating, and I don't know the young man, he may actually may be a great student that's going to go off and do many great things academically and intellectually. However, that message is a sentiment that's spread out throughout the world. Is that once I finish this block of learning, then I don't want to learn anymore. And then this is why we have issues with literacy and advanced literacy, and this is why we have issues with higher order thinking, and this is why we have some of our societal and social challenges, is because people are not very well read, and people basically give up on this idea of learning. Learning becomes an instrumental motivation. It becomes an external motivation. It becomes an extrinsic motivation, instead of being intrinsic. Instead of being intrinsic, it becomes very instrumental. Instead of being integrative, it becomes very extrinsic. And this is very problematic in learning. We need to stop compartmentalizing learning. We need to really advance the notion of lifelong learning. We have to rethink how we structure learning to people, especially young people, to make sure that we're advocating for lifelong learning. We need to get rid of the traditional 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon school day. We need to really advance flipped classrooms. We need to really start promoting virtual learning. We need to start promoting virtual learning. We need to start promoting self-advocacy and self-determination and self-regulation. And virtual learning, online learning, distant learning is a great tool to do that. We need to make sure that we focus on students' wants, needs, and expectations. We need to do what Dr. Carol Ann Tomlinson has asked us to do for decades, and that's make learning interesting, to personalize the learning, to make sure we look at the learning profile to ensure students are ready to learn. And who's the best judge that can decide whether a student is ready to learn? That's the student. The student is the best the best. It can best make the decision, is what I'm trying to say, on whether they're ready to learn. We need to facilitate and promote learning, the idea of learning, and have them make sense of the learning based on their own perspectives, based on their own wants, needs, and expectations. Um, and we really need to address the students' amygdalas and what's in it for me. What is in it for me? And that what's in it for me is not it's not just for instrumental purposes. It's not just for extrinsic purposes. That the greatest value in continuous learning, lifelong learning, is an advancement of our intrinsic selves. And once we do this, I truly know that we won't have some of the mental health issues that we currently are facing, because folks will know thyself, and we can only know thyself through learning, through taking on this idea of lifelong learning, and we have to introduce that at a very young age. We cannot make learning a chore. It is not a job. It is a part of the human experience that will allow us to have the highest quality of life possible. We have to stop compartmentalizing the school day. That learning takes place 24 hours a day, even when we're asleep. That we're processing all of those ideas that we're learning, that we have learned in our subconscious. That we are using higher order thinking skills. That we go back to the original Bloom's and put evaluation at the top of the learning pyramid, the taxonomy, instead of synthesis. Is evaluation. Evaluation promotes lifelong learning. Evaluation promotes lateral learning, where we start to look at the world around us and evaluate it and compare it to our experiences and what we have learned and what's in our long-term memories. And so we can make better societies. So we can, again, make sense of the world. Make sure that we become contributors to the greater good, the greater society. So in order to do that, we have to make learning fun. We have to make it interesting. We have to go back to crashing, and when we talk about language acquisition, go back to crashing and deal with the comprehensible inputs, and don't deny crashing. There's a lot of deniers of crashing when it comes to comprehensible inputs, and I don't think people understand the essence of what crashing is trying to say. Crashing is really saying, look, that when you're introducing the inputs or stimulus for learning, or the concept of learning, that it must be contextual, right? That it must be compelling, right? And it must be understandable. The student must be able to understand it. That's the context. You got to give the student the context. I had a supervisor years ago that used to say, you got to tell people the why. You got to tell people the why. And that's true. In learning, you got to tell the student the why. You got to give them the context. If you don't give students the context, it won't be understandable. You have to address it via the students' wants, needs, and expectations. And if you don't do that, then the student is not going to want to be a lifelong learner. In fact, they're going to look at it extrinsically, and some of them, that amygdala is going to kick in and say, what's in it for me? I don't need to learn this. And it's going to go to the non-thinker part of the brain. And our job as educators is to get information to the frontal cortex, so it can hopefully go into the long-term memory, and students can take that knowledge, take that memory, and evaluate it with the memories of other people in our society. That's our job as educators. That's how we promote lifelong learning. No other way. It's not through textbooks. It's not through fancy curriculum. It's by making sure the inputs are compelling and understandable. It's by making sure that we personalize learning, that the students are ready to learn, and that what is being learned is interesting. This is what promotes lifelong learning.